proposals have finally been released on the different aspects of how they plan to eliminate property tax here in the state of Florida. We'll get into that today. First, I want to welcome you to the Gap Fillers podcast. My name is Michael Bradford, and if you want to support the podcast, go ahead and hit subscribe, like, and comment. That helps get us out there and helps widen the voice that we have here. So they recently released the most popular one, the version that got through the House committees, and that is, let's see here, House Joint Resolution number 203. Here, it's been sponsored primarily by Monique Miller of Palm Bay. Okay, so the big thing that it does is twofold. One, it is only a widening of the Homestead exemption. What does that mean? That means that if you own a business, you still have to pay the property tax. If it's rented, you still have to pay the property tax. If it's for any other use but your primary domicile, you have to pay property tax. So that prevents tourists, that prevents snowbirds, it prevents people from outside the country from owning our land here in Florida, raising the amount of housing costs and moving and then still living in another state. So they're not contributing to our taxes in any other form, because we have purely domestic taxes. So you have to be in the state unless it's this one. So income, stuff like that. Our state does not have that. So this will basically domesticate our taxes. So if you live here, you only pay the taxes that are due when you pay, which is sales tax, and other fees and stuff like that. There is proposals by certain candidates for the governorship that want to do away with domestic tolls. We'll get into that in a different podcast when we go over the candidates for this election. And then, so the big one is the big con for the big argument against getting rid of property taxes is that it will hurt local governments. And so what this does, though, is that it lowers it only by $100,000 a year in value, right? So if you own a $300,000 home, it starts off with a $50,000. In 2027, it'll start with a $50,000 deduction. Okay, so you're only paying taxes on $250,000 of the value of that house. Okay, and then every year after that, it'll decrease another $100,000 until you're not paying anything besides the schooling addendum is the only one that is exempt from this property tax ruling. So. And then fully eliminating the property tax for homesteads by 2037. So if it's your primary domicile, you won't end up paying property tax by 2037. Now, why don't they just get rid of it immediately? Right? That's what you're probably thinking. Okay. This allows state governments to readjust, to find other revenue sources to increase for the deduction. Okay, and revenue that's going to happen in a lot of places. So raising their sales tax, adjusting how much they're spending. For goodness sake, we had $30 million worth of wasteful spending found this year alone in Orlando, and they have continued to audit these counties. Now, I personally think that the federal government should do that to all the states, and then the states should do all the counties, and the counties should do it to all the cities, municipalities. And by doing so, you create a more lean form of government, and so you don't have wasteful spending at every tier of government, at least in theory, right? That should be a primary responsibility of the federal government, is to make sure that the people within the states are not being defrauded. Okay, that goes for if you're in Minnesota, that goes for if you're in Florida, that goes if you're in Oklahoma. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't be defrauded. The government should only be spending the money on what it's allowed to by law. Okay. And then it should be complete transparency on top of that. So, all right, so it would do that, and then it would also prohibit local government from cutting first responders, police, and fire departments. So those are the essential services. If your government can't function without that, then they need to find another revenue source, or they need to not be. Basically, they need to combine or find some other way to make up for that shortcoming, because those are the justice and safety. That's why government exists. If it wasn't for those two things, there's not really much of a reason for for state government specifically. The only other thing would be the federal government is defense. Everything else beyond that is fluff. So, all right. So that's one of the big things, and it made it through the Ways and Means Committee, and it made it through the State Affairs Committee. Along party lines, Democrats, obviously, they've never found a tax that they don't like, and they'll immediately say it's for the kids, the schools, and first of all, the sales tax, the property tax that's still there, that's still left, is the property tax for schools. And then if you're in major Democrat strongholds like Orange County or Tampa, Hillsborough County, and Tallahassee, that kind of area, you're not going to have that big of a problem, because that's a tourist and that's where people spend money. Besides Tallahassee's not as much tourism, but you have government spending there specifically because it's the capital. All right, so the other that's my biggest. I like that one. That one I can be satisfied with. My biggest hang-up was having tourists and having foreigners buy up housing here and sitting on land, or having these massive places that they're not. I think that's actually the one thing that I would change. Actually, is I would have a 10-year probationary period. So you're not just moving here and never paying property taxes. So you're not paying into the system. You're not paying into the services, the whatever that the government wants to say that they provide. Now, Florida has a larger population and a smaller government than the city of New York. So there's really no reason. We in Florida run pretty lean. Now, this would. There's been a couple other proposals. The only other one I'm kind of interested in is maybe like a tax sharing system. That harkens back to what we were talking about, and the problem with that is that it pools money and kind of redistributes it throughout the state. So it bleeds from high producing areas, maybe high tourism areas, to low tourism areas. So it kind of spreads that around. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think there's maybe other ideas or leaner ways that they can operate their government, or maybe a usage fee based government where you only pay the taxes if you use the government service beyond the 3 essential ones. So now the other one that I don't like, the other proposal that I don't like, is they want immediate tax relief for seniors, or 25% assessed reduction. I don't like that one, and here's why. Okay, I'm young, so if you're a retiree, you're gonna hear something you don't like, and the idea is that if you come and most of our retirees come from other states. If you live in the villages, there's more likely a chance that you're from somewhere else. If you're from New Jersey and moving down to Florida, even if you're retired, you should pay into the infrastructure that people like me have lived here all our entire lives, have paid into. So there should be some form of probationary period. There's one that comes back and says it should be 25 years. I like that. So as long as you live here 25 years, you get the senior discount. I'm okay with that. Other states have been trying with this. North Dakota, Texas. Ironically, the states that already have no income tax, we're looking at getting rid of more taxes. Now this is all good. The whole reason we've done this is DeSantis doesn't want to quote be a state of renters. I agree. However, that comes with a caveat. We must also reduce the increase in home prices. I disagree firmly with Trump with the 50-year mortgage. I disagree with him that we should hold prices steady. You had a large increase of home prices over the past 6 years. Since 2020, the housing prices have skyrocketed. So in some places 30%, some places 50%. So you have a overwhelming increase in population. So people from outside of the state may be able to afford that because they come from a higher CPI state, higher cost of living state, where $100,000 saved up in California may not feel that great. But in Florida, you could have gone a little bit further than you used to. All right. So we also must work at doing that. And Florida really shot itself in the foot a little bit. It overreacted with the collapse of the condominium in Miami. And in doing so, they increased or made high-rise condominiums kind of obsolete to a point. You either have to build them, not build them at all, build them under 4 stories, or you have to build them really tall to make up for the inspection fees. And so that's a whole nother thing I've talked about on a podcast a long time ago. So if you want to go back, I think it was like number 4 or something like that. So for pretty much a full year ago now. But so yeah, there's other places that that we need to work on reducing, and particularly the one here in Florida is property insurance. Now we had a few bad storms. Out of season hurricanes kind of thing, unseasonably strong hurricanes. However, in years past, that hadn't been such a bad problem because, first of all, if you look at the houses that were built here in the 60s, they're cinder block. They're brick. They're strong. They're not these sticks, and cookie cutter houses that are being built on swampland and on rivers. So you end up with this problem with the urban sprawl going into former lands that if one house flooded, yeah, it was a tragedy. But if 100 houses flood, it causes an extreme spike in the whole area of or maybe even the whole state. Places like Jacksonville haven't been hurt with a hurricane in the last 100 years, but for some reason still get the increase in property tax or property insurance. And so there needs to be a major thing in reduction in that. In fact, I would think that's more important overall because that one is seeing the most drastic increase and spike in the past few years. So my fits would be more free market, so to speak. It would be more of a private, more of like an HSA kind of program, like a health savings account, but a home savings account. So it allows you to put into say you get insured, right? Obviously there's overhead and stuff like that, and you need to, insurance works by spreading out the risk. But if you're in a low risk area, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to self-insure up to a certain point. Maybe have the value of your mortgage. So as you pay down your mortgage over 15 to 20 years, 30 years, as the principal on that mortgage decreases, you can decrease to the amount of your principal. So it's always covered. So if you do end up losing the house, it will allow the bank to because that will cover their mortgage, so to speak. So they own your house if you have a mortgage, because if you don't pay it, they get it. So maybe they work out that kind of system. The other thing I would like to look at is maybe more private, small group home insurance. Like if you're going to pay $5,000 a year, which is the average for a $300,000 house here in Florida, $5,000 a year. If you pay 10 years, that's $50,000 that you saved up. How many houses get destroyed in the first 10 years? Probably not that much, especially the houses that have been here the longest, probably need the least amount of they need the insurance the least because they've been there for so long that they're less likely because they're built stronger, they're built in a less risky area. So maybe there's works out that kind of system. Now there are already kind of some big discounts, but those are more for hurricane proofing. And while that's all and great, breaking a window it's weird because you can lower your cost of by 25% for all of this, but breaking a window isn't like having your roof fly off or your entire house collapse. It's not convenient, but it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars for a few broken pieces of glass. If somebody gets hurt, it goes beyond that. But beyond, in that isolated incident, you're not going to be paying that much, but they'll give you a huge reduction for impact-resistant glass. They'll give you a huge discount for hurricane shutters, but that doesn't fix the bones. The problem that happens with wind is not the glass breaking; it's the tree falling on your house. It's the house caving in because it's built with wood and toothpicks. So there should be definitely a different kind of system for brick houses, for houses that are older, and then there should be a form of self-insurance. Now, what do we do with this? Now, so overall, they're planning on putting the property tax on the ballot. Because it has to do with the whole state, and it has to do with changing city and county charters. So they have to change it a little bit. We had to amend the Constitution. So that means it has to be something that 60% of voters here in Florida would vote for in November. And I honestly think that one could pass easy. Depends on the system that's put out, and if it goes to tourists and immediate retirees, I may not vote for it, because you'll end up with larger tax burdens in other areas that would overall hinder or hurt the native population here in Florida. But if you enjoyed this podcast, thank you for following me for this far. If you would go ahead and subscribe, that would help. Like, comment, all that helps spread the podcast out into the algorithm. On that note, I appreciate you joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.